good. July, if you know anything about sports schedules, July is right in the middle of football training camp. It's when they're having their different events for running backs, their different events for quarterbacks, and on this occasion, a running back walked into his team locker room, took his cleats off, hung them in his closet, and turned and walked out the door. He hung up one of the most historic football careers to date. He was young. Age didn't play a factor in his decision. Money didn't play a factor in his decision. In fact, he walked away from a multi-million-dollar contract. Health wasn't an issue. He was still in his prime. His knees for a running back seemed almost like they were bionic. He could take a hit and just bounce right back up. And with his announcement, Barry Sanders shocked the baseball world, or football world. How in the world, why in the world would a guy at the prime of his life simply hang his cleats up on a hook and turn and walk out of a locker room, never to dress in a jersey again? Why? Well, as you can imagine, the media was trying to figure out the answer to that question as well. And so they tried to follow him, and they chased him here and they chased him there, and he wouldn't do an interview. He just simply didn't want to talk to the media. And finally, he sent a fax. This is back when we were still sending fax. He sent a fax to his local newspaper, and he simply said this: "My desire to return to football is less than my desire to leave football." That's all he said. That's all he's ever said about walking away from the game. Now, what would motivate a man to pass up millions of dollars? What would motivate a man to give up his football career 1,400 yards shy of the all-time rushing record in the NFL? What would prompt a man to give up the adoration and adulation of thousands of fans? What would prompt a man to give up that kind of lifestyle? After all, isn't that the American dream? Isn't that the epitome of what we want to accomplish? Fame and status and friends and millions of dollars in our bank account. Isn't that the American dream? It wasn't for Barry Sanders. And like others, he found that ultimately those pursuits were empty. Oh, they felt good in the moment. But really, beyond the moment of thrill and the moment of passion, it was simply something that he desired not to do. He's not alone. In fact, a poll that USA Today released not too long ago gave the answer to the following question. And the question that they asked their people that they were reaching out to was, what would you ask God if you could get a direct and immediate answer? And by far, the number one response was this: what's my purpose for being here? Why am I here? Now, they didn't break that down. They didn't break that down between religious and non-religious, and they didn't break that down between Christian and non-Christian. It was just a question that, in fact, the general population responded to. Why am I here? And that answer to that question drives people to do a lot of things. It drives them to try to find the answer in many places. And so I want you to think for just a moment about your life. Why are you here? What is your purpose? Is it simply to get out of bed in the morning after mom or dad or the alarm clock goes off for the third time after we punch snooze? go grab a breakfast, race to our classroom to sit in lectures, or sit in the classroom all day long, to go home and eat dinner and play Xbox for the evening, or go work somewhere and then go to bed to start it all over again the next day. Is that really why we are here? Or is there something beyond that? Or are we like a hamster in a cage that just simply runs and runs and runs and never gets there? Maybe we can learn from the conversation between a canary in the cage and a sparrow on the windowsill. The sparrow looked at the canary and asked, "What's your purpose?" And the canary kind of puffed out his chest and said, My purpose is to eat seeds." The sparrow said, "What for?" To which the canary chimed, "So I can be strong." Again, the sparrow said, "What for?" "So I can sing." "What for?" "So I can get more seed." And so in order to be strong, he's eating seed, and he sings to get more seed so he can be strong, to sing so he can get more seed. And while we laugh at the silliness of that little parable, a lot of people in our world are doing just that. We chase this dream, and we chase this desire. We chase this thing that we think will make us strong, or make us more accepted, or make us pretty, or make us handsome, or make us whatever. And we realize when we taste that it really doesn't do what we wanted it to do. And so we look for something else, and we chase this dream here, and we chase this dream there. And often, God is there on the windowsill saying, "Hey, there's something more to life than this. If you'll get out of that cage and come out here with me on the windowsill, you can see that there's a vast world out here that exists, that if you'll follow me, you'll find." But often, instead of seeking God's plan for our life, we pursue substitutes to add meaning and significance. And although these pursuits are not bad in and of themselves, many times, most times, they're empty. When we get to the end, it's like the dog that chases. You ever been on a country road and had a dog run out and start barking at your car as you've driven by? You ever thought, what's that dog going to do if he actually catches the car? What's he going to do with it? And yet we do that so often in life, don't we? I'm going to tell you a couple stories this morning about a couple, well, I'm going to tell you 3 stories about 3 old men, all right? An old man sat on the porch in a rocking chair. I knew enough about him that it made me want to listen to him. You ever met somebody like that? They have just a neat life. They've done a lot. They've accomplished a lot. And so you just kind of want to hear their stories. And so as I looked, his hair was white, his skin was wrinkled, he walked with a slight limp, and yeah, he was old, but man, he had been successful. He had money. In fact, he had more money than I could ever imagine having in my life. He had employees, hundreds of employees that worked around his house, and he was at the prime of all of that, and so to speak. He had accumulated his wealth. He's in the upper years of his life, and now he's just kind of basking in all of his success. Here I am, a young guy, and yet I knew he had something to offer me. Now, I knew that I'd never get his wealth, the cash that is, but I knew I would get some wealth, that is his wisdom, if I listened to him. I want to share some of the advice that I got from him. He said, you know, excuse me. He said, in my younger days, he said, I thought that getting more knowledge would help me to be successful in life. And he said, so I searched for wisdom. I searched for wisdom here, and I searched for knowledge there, and I was consumed with knowing more. He said, you know the old saying, knowledge is power. And I was consumed with getting as much knowledge as I possibly could, and so I chased it wherever I could go. So I think about what he was saying to me then. Perhaps this is the one thing that we as a society still place a value on, it seems. It seems like society says that if you have a degree from Harvard, you're something. In fact, I was a little amused as I watched the Supreme Court nominee and listened to his credentials, and everybody was wowed that this man attended one of the Ivy League colleges, and he actually went over to Oxford in England and studied for a little while. That's where he met his wife, and wow, this guy's impressive. He has a lot of knowledge. And in our world today, we seem to, if you have PhD at the end of your name or something, it's important in our world. And you know, young people, we place a lot of value on knowledge at God's Bible School. And that's important. We want, if you come here, we want you to have the best, the absolute best education that is possible. We don't want to hide behind that. We don't want to try to gloss over that. We believe in excellence. We believe in high quality education. And so we have, in my opinion, the finest faculty around in the classroom teaching you on a daily basis. We value that. That's why we pursue accreditation, not so that we can put a bunch of letters behind the name of the school. No, we do it so we can be excellent at what we do. So if you come here, you will get a great education. You will get knowledge. But friends, I want you to understand this. Knowledge in and of itself does not benefit you spiritually. It doesn't make you moral. Knowledge doesn't make you a better Christian than anyone else. And so while we want your heads crammed full of knowledge, more than that, we want that knowledge to go beyond a head knowledge and become a heart reality that compels you to live differently and to make an impact in our world. He said, I sought after knowledge. And he said, at the end of that, I realized that knowledge isn't where it's at. He said, so then I sought after pleasure. He said, I wanted to find happiness. If happiness isn't in having my brain filled with information, then perhaps happiness is out here doing a lot of fun things. And so he started seeking for pleasure, he said. He had girlfriends and he had wives and all of these things that he was following after. He had all the accumulation of the stuff of this world, looking for fun, looking for pleasure. And young people, pleasure in and of itself isn't wrong. I like to have a good time. I like to be down. I wish last night, had I not been struggling with whatever I've got going on, I would have had on my gym clothes. I'd have been down there playing because I enjoy that. I like that. So pleasure isn't wrong. Where pleasure is wrong is when you seek pleasure outside of the will of God. And this old man is telling me, and now I'm sharing with you, listen, if you're chasing pleasure just to see what you can get out of it, it's going to be empty. And yet our culture is continually saying that. Entertain me and thrill me and stimulate me. And I hope that this is one of the funnest days of your life here on our campus. I hope you have a great time. But if you walk away from our campus just having a great time, you miss the purpose of VIP Day. Oh, we want you to have fun, but more than that, we want you to understand that God has called you for more than just pleasure seeking. He went on. He said, I sought after knowledge, I sought after pleasure. And then he just said, I decided that I was going to have a great vocation. I was going to do something in life. And So he tried many things. As he talked, I discovered that he was a builder. He had built a number of fantastic buildings that would amaze us. And he did a successful job in the building industry. He was a financial person. He was able to take money and multiply money, and he was a success in that area. He was in the horses, and it seems like you have to have a lot of money if you're going to be in horses. But he's in horses, and he said, I had the best bred horses in the country. He said, I discovered that value didn't come from being a great builder, or being a great financial guy, or being a great horseman. He said, I still was left with the questions at night of, what do I really want to do in life? Is what I'm doing really making a difference? And I wonder today about you in the quiet moments. You can be, I believe in you. You can be a doctor, you can be an attorney, you can be an engineer, you can be whatever it is that lights your fire. You can. I believe you have the intellectual abilities to do that. But really, that's not the question. The question isn't, what do I want to do? As a Christian, it's, what does God want me to do? And friends, I want you to understand that we here at God's Bible School, if you can tell us that God is wanting you to be a doctor, we're going to stand behind you and say, go. We want to help you. We'll encourage you. But really what we're after is, what does God want me to do? And really that's the ultimate. It's not what my parents want me to do. It's not what my mentors tell me to do. It's, what does God want me to do? So what's your vocation? The old man went on. He said, after I had achieved this kind of success, I decided that perhaps I would find meaning and purpose in life by having a bunch of stuff. And so I had houses, he said, everywhere. I had fine furniture. I had gardens that were meticulously maintained. I had fine artwork and all of these things in my house. I just had stuff everywhere. But he said, in the end, stuff didn't bring pleasure. Then he said, I sought after power and fame. I wanted to become something. I wanted people to look at me and say, wow, this guy's made it. And I wanted people to praise me. And I wanted people to rally around me. And when I spoke, I wanted great crowds to come and listen to me. And he said, but I found that didn't bring happiness either. He said, then the light clicked on. I got it. If I can just help people, that'll be my purpose in life. Oh, and friends, there are a lot of people who've bought into this false pursuit too. You ever seen when there's a disaster, how many people give to the Red Cross or United Way or whatever, Salvation Army? All of a sudden we become very generous in those times. Why? Because we're trying to ease our conscience. If I help you in the time of need, then that makes me a good person. The old man says, I wanted to help. And so I helped, but I found that in just helping people, it didn't scratch the itch of really what my purpose should be in life. He said, I focused on relationships in my life too. He said, I've been married several times. I've had a lot of girlfriends. But that didn't bring happiness. And I listened as he bowed his gray head. Old man now. And he shook his head. And he says, man, it's empty. It's empty. All of this is empty. It's empty. You know who that old man was? Solomon. And you can read everything that I just shared with you in the book of Ecclesiastes. Go through that book. I sought it. It's empty. It's empty. Al Ballard, a friend of mine in Oklahoma City, successful banker, managed the largest bank in southwestern Oklahoma, a little town called Altus. He had achieved success in his life. He was the major property owner in that community. There was an Air Force base or an Army base nearby, and he had rentals, and he kept them supplied with these folks who were basically transient and just made a lot of money. He told me on more than one occasion, he said, Rodney, if somebody in town started to build a house that was nicer than ours, he said we would go build a nicer house so that we'd have the nicest one in the county. He said if I were in the bank and I noticed a nice car in the drive-thru that was a little nicer than mine, I'd go down to the dealer that day and say, I need to upgrade cars. Somebody else has a nicer car, and I want to make sure that I have the nicest car in town. He said we'd go to a party, and my wife would have, this is back when people wore furs, I guess. I haven't seen many people wear furs anymore, but if my wife didn't have the nicest furs, he said we'd go down to the local, wherever you buy them, and anybody know what a fur purchasing place is called? Nobody. All right, so I'm not alone. And he said we would buy the nicest. He said if I saw somebody with a beautiful ring, a lady with a beautiful ring, I'd ask her where she got it, because I'd go get it with an extra diamond just to make sure she had the best. He said everything was going great. He said the only problem was we couldn't have children. And so after a little while, we decided to adopt a little boy, Britt. He said, Britt was a great guy, and he grew up, and he got to his teen years, and we wanted him to have everything. So he had a new car, and he had all the nice things, and we just gave him whatever he wanted. And he said when Britt hit about 18 years old, we started talking about college and where we wanted to send him off to. And he said we sent him to college, and he said, man, Britt went haywire. He said about the same time, my wife and I split. We got a divorce after 20 years of marriage. I'm sitting in a restaurant. He's telling me this. Now, he's crying. He said, Rodney, Britt decided he wasn't a boy, and so he went and had surgery, and now he's a girl. He said if Britt came in right now, you would think that he was a girl. Now this is 10 years ago. This is, now we're kind of half expecting that. A couple months later, I was in another restaurant with him, and he said, Rodney, Britt's coming. He needs money, and I'm going to give him some money. And I said, that's fine. And I'm telling you, this woman walked in, came up to him and said, hey, Dad, gave him a hug. And I'm telling you, I would never in a million years, if I saw Britt out there alone, would guess that it was a man. Crying. Rodney, we had everything. Everything you can buy in life. But it's worthless. Really, Al? 70-some rent houses, thousands of dollars coming in every month. Successful banker, beautiful car, empty. Rodney, he said, it's empty. He came into Hope Sound Bible Church and came about 2/3 of the way down, about where McKaylin is, and sat down in a chair and threw his arms on the back of his head like this and sat back. That's a little disconcerting as a preacher. I mean, that's basically saying, dude, I'm here, but I'm not here, I'm just chilling out. Somebody leaned over and whispered to me, and they said, you know who that is? I said, he looks a little odd to me. I don't know who he is. They said, he's one of the richest guys on Jupiter Island. Oh, well, he can sit where, however he wants. Let's just hope he pays tithe. In fact, in Hope Sound, I was tempted about putting on the church sign, we'll accept 8%, Some of you will get that in a minute. So he sat there, and I tried after church to go meet him. I shook his hand, and he always called me Parson. And A few days later, he called the church office and he said, I want to meet with the parson. I said, oh, whatever. He said, I want to take you around. Well, in the meantime, I'd done some homework on Ed Ham. And you know what I discovered? This guy was loaded, all right? I mean, loaded. Probably the wealthiest guy on the island, and when I say that, that means something, okay? And owns 7 houses over there, massive properties. And the other thing I found out about this guy is that he had this great oddity about him, that he loved to pass out $100 bills. Every day, he would go to the local bank and get $10,000 in $100 bills and pass them out that day. Now, some of you are saying, I'm going to Florida. I shouldn't have been sharing this at VIP day, right? So he comes and he says, I want to take you around. So I get in his Cadillac, and he drives a Cadillac because he wants his money to stay in America, and one of his another oddities. But we're riding around in his Cadillac, and he sees the garbage man. Slams on his brakes, rolls down his window, pulls off a couple $100 bills, and hands it to him. Well, that's interesting. What I want to say is, dude, I'm over here. The parson is here. And so we go somewhere else, and he sees somebody else. He slams on the brake, rolls down his window, pulls out a couple $100 and hands it. And I'm telling you, they must have had some kind of communication, because people just started coming out of the woodwork, and he just whipping off $100 bills, passing them out. Took me to one property, took me to all of his properties, and one hilarious moment was he said, hey, there's a back way to my property. I said, oh, that's great, let's go. It was on the cart path of the golf course. He just turned onto the cart path, and here we go in his Cadillac through the golf course, and he knows he's about to get in trouble, and he sees a grounds worker, and so he pulls off a couple $100 bills and hands it out, and we just keep going. I'm not making this up. It's crazy. He never did give me money. And when he'd come to church, he'd put, $1,000 of, 10 $100 bills in the plates, and that was a blessing, but never offered me anything. And I started listening. He'd come and valet his car at night. A friend of mine was a valet. And there were times he'd whip out $1,000 and hand to my buddy to park his car for an hour. Why? Well, that doesn't make sense. Well, number one, he wasn't even coming close to touching his interest that he was earning, okay? We don't understand that. $10,000 a day, our minds are, at least my mind, maybe not yours, but my mind just kind of fizzles out. And I found out that when he was a boy, his daddy had been kidnapped, and his family received a ransom note for several millions of dollars. And that affected Ed Ham. And what he would tell people when you would ask him, why are you doing this? Doesn't make sense. You know what he'd say? If they like me, if I give them $100 bills, they won't kidnap me. They want me around. And so what he was doing was he was buying his security. He was buying, listen, this convoluted thinking, he was buying his own value. Now, there's no one here. There's no one here this morning who can do that. But in 1,000 other ways, we try to buy our value and our meaning and our significance. Let's go back to the porch for just a moment. The old man you now know as Solomon is sitting there. And finally, we muster up enough courage to say, Solomon, why are we here? In Ecclesiastes at the end, you know what he says? He says, here's the conclusion on the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. I've chased all these things, young man, young lady. I followed after knowledge. I followed after pleasure. I followed after stuff. I did all of this out there. But you know what really matters in life? Is fearing God and keeping his commandments. If I could challenge you today as you try to make the decision about what God has for you, is you're not going to find purpose and meaning outside of God. Whether that's coming to God's Bible school or going somewhere else, make sure that whatever you do is in the vein of following after God. A man once stood before God. His heart was breaking from the pain and injustice of the world. And dear God, he cried out, look at all the suffering. Look at all the anguish. Look at all the wrong that's in the world. Why didn't you send help? And God responded, I did send help. I sent you. Friends, the deep underlining motivation in my life, and I hope is the motivation of your life, is this. I want my life to count for Jesus. Not for Rodney, not for what I want, but for him. Will you listen? Did you listen to the advice of 3 old men this morning? I hope. If you do, you'll find your purpose and meaning in life.
Father, we thank you for this truth that we have heard. We ask that you would help us to apply it to our hearts and our lives and live it out for your kingdom and for your glory. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. All right, I need all of you to go ahead and stand with me. Stretch a little bit. High five 3 people that are around you, okay? Good. All right, one of you only high five 2, I'm positive. All right, great. Well, thank you all for being here. We're so thrilled to have you here for VIP Day. My name is Kent Stetler, if you don't know. And if you have any questions, see me around, please let me know. We're getting ready to go into the next session of VIP Day. Thank you, Mr. Loper, for that wonderful, wonderful message and truth this morning. You can go ahead and have a seat. I'm going to hit a couple announcements, and then we're going to keep rolling so we can keep with our time frame. Just so you know, that area where you registered last night is now our information station. So if you have any questions at all, please come by, talk with us. We'll be happy to point you in the right direction or answer any questions. We can hook up you with some teachers. If you want to talk with people, just let us know. We'll be happy to do that. In the afternoon, if for some reason you didn't get a shirt or you got a wrong size, feel free to stop by sometime in the afternoon, and we'll see if a t-shirt is available for you. Parents and sponsors, just so you know, at 11:45, there's going to be a parent and sponsor session in our cafeteria area in the very back. Mr. Nathan Dowler will be in charge of that, so coordinate with him. Make sure you're down there at 11:45 for that.